And with that, I yield to the ranking member Stanbury for her opening statement.
All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome indeed to the Doge Subcommittee. It's always an interesting journey here. Madam Chairwoman, before we get started, I want to take a moment to observe that this very subcommittee was created in January to act as the congressional tip of the spear for Doge and Elon Musk's efforts inside the federal government, which our GOP colleagues were falling all over themselves to get in on the action. And in fact, I don't know if you know this, Madam Chairwoman, but one of your own GOP members who couldn't get on the committee actually contacted me to see if I could help because they were so desperate to participate in this activity. But here we are. I feel like we should play a breakup song in the midst of the breakup of the GOP with Elon Musk and Doge, and yet still the zombie lurches on. And you know, I think it's interesting that people are barely saying his name in these halls, and this subcommittee barely has any credibility at this point. And Elon Musk still hasn't appeared under oath in front of this committee or any body here in Congress. And in fact, Donald Trump himself apparently asked his own aides this week if Doge was, and I quote the president, bullshit. Donald Trump asked if Doge was bullshit. Meanwhile, our friend, Mr. Musk, is going crazy on Twitter. We just checked. He's still going at it. And he literally has been tweet storming the GOP for the last 24 hours. And he says, I'm sorry, but I just can't stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it. And you know what I find interesting about his tweet is that he says, I'm sorry, I just can't stand it anymore. And I think, you know, the American people have been there for the last 3.5 months as they've dismantled the federal government, as Musk and Trump and his friends here have helped lay wake to the federal government, dismantling federal agencies, firing thousands of federal workers, stealing your private data, costing the federal government millions of dollars. And in fact, it appears that they may have actually cost more money than they apparently saved. So it's hard to take any of this seriously or with any credibility. Musk lied about Doge and its savings. The president and the speaker just this morning, once again, lied about the big abomination of the bill and the deficit spending in it. There was a misrepresentation of a witness in this hearing last time. There was lies about the budget, reconciliation, and yes, the Doge package, which was transmitted to Congress yesterday. And I don't think I even need to comment on the wild journey of baseless conspiracy theories that we just heard. So, it's very clear that Doge has made America less safe, less secure, undermined our global and national security, compromised our data privacy, impacted our ability to serve our vulnerable communities, and left the government in total chaos. And yet, many of these Doge brothers have implanted themselves inside of federal agencies and are now answering directly to the West Wing and to the Director of Office of Management and Budget, Mr. Russell Vought, who, by the way, is testifying just across this campus on his bill for the FY26 budget, which would eviscerate these programs. So I want to say, first, they came for our federal agencies. Then they came for our judges and law firms and the rule of law. Then they came for the free press and your freedom of speech. Then they came for higher education and our children. Then they came for congressional offices. And now, here they are, coming for civil society and nonprofit organizations. What are nonprofit organizations? Food banks, legal aid clinics, homeless shelters, organizations that are the glue of our communities. In fact, right now, they are withholding $500 billion illegally from nonprofit organizations that provide services for our communities. Public safety, health services, housing, the big brothers and big sisters of America, Boys and Girls Club and Habitat for Humanity. Is this the dark money scare that we're hearing across the aisle? I think all of us understand what these organizations do in our communities. But let us be clear. The actions that are happening here in this committee and which the administration are trying to execute through executive actions, through letters, and yes, sending Doge employees baselessly and illegally into nonprofit organizations are illegal. They lack moral authority and they lack legal authority. The truth is simple. Neither the president nor any other executive branch official has the power to unilaterally revoke an organization's tax-exempt status or to use these authoritarian tactics to try to intimidate our nonprofit and civil society organizations. And we will dive deeper into that topic and your rights during this hearing. But if my colleagues across the aisle want to talk about dark money networks, we can look no further than this very hearing room, because if we actually want to understand the dark money funded networks that are making the government run right now, let's talk about Project 2025. The witnesses who are here today as part of the organizations that helped to craft it. Mr. Vogt, who was at the helm as the architect of that document, and the folks who are inside the federal government right now, dismantling our agencies and attacking every aspect of our democracy. We will not stand for it. And with that, Madam Chairwoman, I yield back.
Without objection, Representatives Gosar of Arizona.
Thank the gentleman very much. The distinguished gentleman from Florida, Mr. Frost, you're recognized.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Yes, and I agree with the comments we just heard from my colleague, Representative Burchett. And hopefully, as years go on and more people come to the institution, we actually get the guts to deal with this waste, fraud, and abuse in the DOD and with our military contractors that, yes, are stealing from us. And I think it's despicable that so much of our taxpayer money goes to these companies. And yet, I'll tell you one place I was last week. I was on the picket line with the UAW in my district in front of Lockheed Martin because they're not paying the assembly line workers and the people creating all this stuff enough money to be able to pay their damn rent in Orlando. Mr. Mayo, but before we can even talk about having the courage at some, time and place we're unsure of, we got to talk about what's going on right now. Mr. Mayo, this past week, the Pentagon announced that Doge had been authorized to review most unclassified Pentagon contracts to root out inefficiency. Is Doge answering to you or the DOD IG in this effort?
We haven't talked to Doge at all.
You haven't spoken with Doge at all?
No, they've not.
When was your office consulted about Doge's input into the contract review process?
I can't answer that, sir. I don't know.
You don't know. Because to me, if your job is to find waste, fraud, and abuse, and then you have Doge, which is supposedly supposed to be looking for waste, fraud, and abuse, would you agree that the only efficient way to go about that would be to work together?
Yes, sir. Perhaps.
In the contract review process run by the DOD IG, how would you typically prevent political interference?
Please restate that.
In the contract review process that the IG's office runs in DOD, how do you typically go about preventing political interference?
I have no answer for that because that's not part of what we do, but I can certainly get back to you on that and get some.
So do you have any idea of how your office is ensuring that Doge has the strongest controls possible to prevent this kind of abuse that we're talking about?
Well, Doge, I don't know because Doge hasn't come to the OIG at this point. We have not seen anybody from Doge.
Yeah, I mean, under Doge, it feels like efficiency and anti-fraud have been actively defunded, deregulated, dismantled, and disregarded. And this is part of the problem is we can sit up here and talk about work in a bipartisan way all we want, and I think that's really important. In fact, the chair of the committee, Comer, said during his comments, quote, DOD is the poster child for waste, fraud, and abuse, but voted yes on a budget that would give the Department of Defense more money than they've ever had, over $1 trillion. So, and then on the other hand, they talk about waste, fraud, and abuse in food assistance, in Medicaid, and slash that to the tunes of hundreds of billions of dollars. That means they're taking more of an aggressive approach on working families and people who depend on some of these services for their health care and to feed their children than they will with the military contractors. That's why, and to, Burchett's being really nice about it, But that's part of the reason why we're not going to handle this. We can sit up here and talk to you all day. The fact of the matter is, right in front of us, the majority is moving through a budget that would give the Department of Defense the most money they've ever had, while they are, quote unquote, the poster child for waste, fraud, and abuse. Americans need to know which Pentagon dollars are going to service members and national defense and which are lining the pockets of unethical contractors, over 50% of the DoD budget. According to the recent GAO testimony before this committee, the DoD thinks there's very little fraud in their procurement. Mr. Bagdoyan, do you agree with the DoD's assessment?
I do not.
And Mr. Mayo, do you agree with the DoD's assessment that there's little fraud?
I do not.
From where you sit, have the Doge staff firings and reduction of resources from the IG's office to other offices, has this helped you investigate fraud cases?
No,
Does it hurt?
I think we're doing the same thing we've always done.
So
We continue to just run cases, run investigations like we've done, and we just do what we're supposed to do. And I don't think it's impacted us as an investigative agency.
all right, thank you. I've been watching the limited progress towards getting DoD to be able to pass a financial audit. The Marine Corps recently explained that the personnel cuts will likely erase the progress they've made when last year they became the first of our service branches to be able to pass a financial audit. I don't know what the path we're on is right now. I think it's hurting these efforts. My hope is that we'll be able to take this seriously moving ahead and not just put it in our sights, food assistance and Medicaid, when it comes to cutting budgets because of perceived waste, fraud, and abuse, but look at the biggest budget item that we have and the poster child of waste, fraud, and abuse, as said by our chairman of the full committee, the Department of Defense. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. Thank you very much.